We're here on a brisk morning in the new year. Happy New Year to you all. And in this video I wanted to share some notes around what has been an exciting new development of what feels like an explosion of red wigglers. We'll see if that's actually true. And share some thoughts on how we got to this place where there's so many worms even though we're in the winter. And then we're going to do a nice chunk of chicken TV to bring in the new year, so stick with us. First thing I wanted to share is that for those of you that follow the channel closely, the last chicken video, the compost moves video, which was only, I should look it up, but maybe about 10 days ago, not that long ago, we moved most of the compost out of this area. And you can see, this gives you a sense of just how much material is moving through here. This is even in the winter months. And lots of steam. You know the deal at this point. The sprout scene is starting to get really stable and distributed through all these beds. There's just basically everywhere we turn there are now sprouts because we've been adding grain for so long. It's the beauty of working with whole grain is there's never wasted grain. It just sprouts and grows. But what I wanted to show is this area where all of a sudden red wigglers are coming like crazy and why I think we got there. It's funny how sometimes when you try really hard to do something, it doesn't work, and when you quit trying so hard, it starts working. For a bunch of years, we brought red wigglers in from friends' compost over and over again. The chickens would just eat them up before they had a chance to get going. At some point, that population must have locked in this particular pile, hidden low enough underneath where the chickens were scratching, that now we're finding pretty incredible population happening here. Now I want to conserve these. You can see if I left this open, the hens would eat them up instantly. But you get this sense of this. The red wiggler life in here is just absolutely exploding.
You better hide.
This is such a wonderful scene. All the sprouts, all the worms. The chickens are pretty excited about it. We'll leave a few. But what I've been finding is that every time I find these red wigglers, I make sure to go and take some extra compost and throw it on top to bury them a little bit and make it harder for the chickens to get to them. And this way the chickens are eating some, they're eating whichever ones come up to the surface very readily. To me, this is a pretty amazing scene. Early January, snow flying, the ground is covered in snow, here we are, and there's sprouts and worms. I want to share with you why I think this is happening. So when I dug around in some other areas, there were a few red wigglers, but the incredible pocket of them, the real nucleus of them, is right next to this compost ring. And we've got this pile, we've talked about this extensively, where we add leaves and wood chips, we add food scraps and sprouts, you get the gist with that. But where the red wiggler population is exploding is right next to this ring. And what I think is happening here is that this metal ring, this compost ring, where we normally put woodier debris, larger chunks of material to settle over time, it's an area that chickens can never scratch in. They cannot get inside this space. And so the few cocoons of red wigglers that were in the compost are very safe deep inside there, and they're able to inoculate into this pile readily because they've got this home base, so to speak. And so every time I turn compost around this compost ring, that's where I'm seeing the largest population. And of course, I'll turn here. Oh, there we go. The chickens see them before we do, and they're pretty much gone within a few seconds. And I was just reading online, and what I'm learning is that red wigglers, their ideal temperatures are around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I just put a temp probe in here. And so we're winter New York State. What are you going to do? Right here we're at about 58, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Colder than they would like, but I can see it going up a little, but it's around 60, 70 degrees. We can put hay on top of these areas to insulate. The thing that I'm really coming to, though, is that in these large windrows of compost in the winter, it really behooves the red wiggler population to have rings or some sort of blockades where the chickens can't actively scratch all of them out. So we're going to add more rings to this compost system in the middle of it to make nice islands for those populations to explode, and then flank on the edges more and more with these milk crates, which we've used a lot, and make sure that compost sits up against them. Fresh food scraps, aging food scraps, and the like, so that the worms have a chance to migrate into these boxes, hibernate, expand, what have you, and then come back into the compost. Very minimal adjustment to have a huge long-term impact. A little crusty on top, but a lot happening underneath. Here's a pocket where the chickens seem to dig through most of it. We've been making a lot more charcoal in our wood stove lately, and that helps keep this compost smelling really clean, and it seems like it makes a healthier space for the worms to work too. As the wind picks up, we realize leaving that place where we open up the worms is not that kind to the worms, and so here we've got this pile. This is from the deep bedding in the coop, which is predominantly hay, but also has a lot of chicken manure in it, a lot of good food for those worms. We're going to go ahead and put that, excuse me ladies, as a deep insulative cap over where the strongest populations are. That should keep them really cozy, and then they can migrate up and into this bedding as they choose. At some point I'd like to see if we can get enough worm population that we can introduce them into the coop in the deep litter method that's in the coop and have an active red wiggler farming system happening in there. But we'll just see how that goes. It's definitely a fair bit of work every day to keep a system like this operating, but it feels so worthwhile. The money we don't have to spend on feed, the amount of plastic we don't have to buy in the form of bags, the quality of life for our hens, the health of the hens, the quality of the eggs, the quality of their meat, it's pretty amazing. And then of course all the compost. When elements like red wigglers finally show up and start exploding in population, it feels like icing on the cake that the system is really becoming a living ecosystem. As the wind picks up and it gets colder, it feels like it's time to move the energy more towards this high tunnel. So I'm going to spend a little time turning for our friends that want to be outside today. And we'll transition over to some chicken TV so you can enjoy seeing that process. How are we doing? Here they come. We've had a lot of heavy, cold rains lately, and this material's a little more on the wet side, which can definitely trend towards anaerobic. So I'll be adding some more charcoal into here, so maybe some sawdust, some leaves, some wood chips. Hello. Some hens are still finishing up the molt. Butterscotch, what are you doing out here? It's too cold for you. Go in that high tunnel.